We have the latest on the Islanders GM search, which will be huge in determining the future of this team, plus some more on potential first-round pick Matthew Schaefer. All of that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey, and these are exciting times for Islanders fans. We've got a jam-packed show today. We'll have the latest updates on the Islanders GM search. We'll talk more about Matthew Schaefer, who most scouts believe is the best available player in this year's draft. And we'll review the season and potential future role with the Islanders for controversial defenseman Tony DAngelo. All that and more coming up on today's show. The GM search for the Islanders, being conducted by minority owner John Collins, remains a very interesting situation. And, you get all these reports with some information. Some of them contradict each other. But realistically, it seems like we're getting a little more information about where all of this is going. So, rumor number one, that the Islanders were interested in Hall of Famer Ken Holland. He already had an interview with the Islanders, according to various reports, but it appears he may be more interested in another job, potentially Buffalo, and that he is unlikely to be the next GM of the New York Islanders. The Islanders are also allegedly interested in speaking to LA Kings executive Mark Bergevin. That hasn't happened yet, but the fact that Rob Blake is now out as GM of the Kings kind of puts Bergevin in, maybe he's the next Kings GM. And he has, the opportunity to stay in LA and take over that job. The Islanders haven't spoken to him one-on-one yet, and we're waiting to see whether or not an interview is actually set up. Now, the Islanders have also, according to Arthur Staple of The Athletic, reached out to the Montreal Canadiens, wanting to speak to Vice President Jeff Gorton, but the Canadiens apparently are saying Gorton is staying in Montreal and they are not going to, give permission for that interview. So it's out as of right now. Again, any of these things could change at any time. But as of right now, it does not appear that Gorton is going to be a serious candidate. Now, the Islanders are also interested, apparently, in Matthew Darce of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's the assistant GM there. However, we do not know whether or not he is going to be the ultimate candidate on this list, but we'll see, whether or not that actually happens. Now, the Lightning were eliminated last week in the first round. And, Darce is considered a highly regarded up-and-coming guy who is ready for a GM opening. In fact, last year he interviewed with both the Penguins and the Maple Leafs. And, he is believed to be interested in the Islanders GM situation. But again, we have to see whether or not that moves forward. And then there are other people who are still working for teams that are in the playoffs right now. We've heard rumors about assistant general manager Scott White of the Dallas Stars as a potential candidate, but you got to wait until the Stars are out of the playoffs, or, if they go all the way to the final, you got to wait until the end of the playoffs. So that's one thing. But here's something I like about White. And also, Darce, he did a great job of helping the Tampa Bay Lightning not just get to the top of the league and win Stanley Cups, but essentially to stay at the top of the league for an extended period of time. I mean, the fact that the Lightning lost in the first round of the playoffs to the defending Stanley Cup champions, not ideal. But if you were to list the top 10 contending teams going into the playoffs, the Lightning would certainly still be on that list, and Darce had a lot to do with it. And then when you talk about Scott White, you're looking at someone who helped. He is right now the Texas Stars general manager, which is the AHL farm club of the Dallas Stars. And again, when you think about it, building up that farm system and that prospect pool is something that the Islanders certainly need to do here on Long Island. So, a few names now looking less likely, a few names looking perhaps a little bit more likely. But again, John Collins is conducting this search, and we'll see how long it takes. Again, the draft is at the end of June. I think the Islanders would prefer, the playoffs are going to end a week or so before the draft. I don't think the Islanders want to wait that long to get the new GM in place. But if they really have their sights set on somebody, maybe the patience is worth it. Now, I've heard some fans a little concerned. Lou Lamoriello, his name still on the team's website. Calm down. Lou is under contract with the New York Islanders until June 30th. He was not fired, but he was told his contract is not going to be renewed. So he's on the payroll, and he is employed by the New York Islanders for another 6 or 7 weeks. But he is not making decisions regarding who his successor is going to be. He is essentially a lame duck. He's cleaning up loose ends and finalizing his work with the team. And, he's not going to be the guy who makes the decision as to who replaces him. But I think, we're hearing more news. And again, so much of the news that we're hearing tends to be contradictory. 1 minute you hear, oh, this guy is interested, this guy is not interested, the Islanders are interested. It's a process, and it's going to take time. And as nerve-wracking as it is right now for the New York Islanders to not have a GM when you have the first pick in the draft, a couple of thoughts. First of all, any of these candidates, whether they're presently employed by an NHL team or not, are definitely going to have opinions and insight into the top prospects in this year's draft. So if you're wondering, do you want Matthew Schaefer? Do you want Misa? Do you want Hagens? Do you want somebody else? Do you trade the pick? All of these potential candidates are people who are on top of that kind of information. It's not like they're going to come into the Islanders offices and have to start from scratch, looking at film, judging whether or not this player is better than that player. All of that is in place. What is going to be critical, and why I don't want to wait until mid-June before right before the draft, it's not just about the draft and free agency. There's a lot of things the new GM needs to do, and the new president of hockey operations, depending on if it's one person or two people. But this person or these people need to revamp the scouting department, the player personnel department, the whole AHL Bridgeport operation. Probably need to get a new coach for Bridgeport. Probably, need to decide whether or not Patrick Waugh comes back. And then how many restricted or unrestricted free agents do the Islanders have to deal with this offseason? You're deciding the future of Kyle Palmieri, Simon Holmstrom, Noah Dobson, Max Siplikov, Alexander Romanov, Tony DAngelo, Mark Gatcomb. There are so many guys, Hudson Fasching, Mike Riley, who need to know whether or not the Islanders are interested in them returning. And then, there are the buyout candidates. There's the Pierre Engvalls and the Scott Mayfields and maybe the Anthony Duclairs, depending on which rumors may or may not be true. There are a lot of things you need to figure out, and the sooner you hit the ground running, the better. I don't want to rush it so you get the wrong person, but I do want to make sure that the new person has enough time to be ready for the draft, free agency, figuring out whether or not to bring back RFAs and UFAs and making qualifying offers. There's just a lot of work that needs to be done. But boy, these are exciting times for the Islanders and their fans. Think about this. 3-4 weeks ago, this team looked dead in the water. So many fans were like, I can't watch this anymore. I don't have any hope for the future. All of a sudden, you have a new GM coming in. We don't know who it is yet, but we've moved on from Lou and the first overall pick in this year's draft. These are exciting times for the New York Islanders and their fans. We have got a lot more to discuss. Matthew Schaefer is considered the top prospect in this year's draft. But where does he line up compared to other past number one picks? We'll analyze that. We'll talk about Tony DAngelo. Should he be back with the Islanders, and what impact what will determine whether or not he's back? Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a player who was with the Islanders for more than a decade and, may be done as an Islander as of the end of this season. We've got all that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need to hire like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. So we all know at this point that most scouts around the NHL view Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman, as the top prospect in this draft. And that's not to say there aren't questions and there aren't scouts who disagree, but Schaefer at this point, is considered a player who can skate really well, has good size, can move the puck, but only played 17 games last year. Did play well in, tournaments against elite competition when he was out there. He is the kind of guy who some executives and scouts feel can be a multiple Norris Trophy winner as the league's top defenseman, although other scouts kind of think that, his offensive upside may not be there. But The Athletic did an interesting piece about ranking the last 10 top prospects in the draft. Well, the last 9 plus Matthew Schaefer, and trying to figure out where does Matthew Schaefer fit in if you're ranking the last 9 top prospects and Schaefer, and where does he go? So, I think it's kind of telling where this answer was. So the number one ranked number one prospect over the last decade, Austin Matthews, back in 2016. Nobody had him ranked lower than the number 2 prospect in that draft. He was a potential franchise center, and let's just say Matthews lived up to that ranking. Coming in second is 2024 pick Macklin Celebrini, who the Sharks took. Scouts had him ranked anywhere between 1 and 5, but he really was the consensus number 1 pick. And we'll see, whether or not he ultimately pans out, but he is certainly off to a solid start. Coming in third on this list is Connor Bedard, presently with the Chicago Blackhawks. Again, most people had him ranked as number 1. The lowest rank by scouts was 6th. But Bedard, he was the consensus number 1 pick in that draft and considered a generational talent. I kind of think it's a little controversial that some of these experts rank Celebrini ahead of Bedard. But again, we'll see. Both of those players looking really, really good. Coming in at the number 4 spot is Jack Hughes from 2019, now with the Devils. And again, when he got hurt, we saw how badly the Devils missed him down the stretch and in the playoffs. And it was kind of, evident that he is a star player who still has the potential to get even better. But ranking number 5, right, in the middle of this 10-player list is Matthew Schaefer. And again, scouts, the biggest concern about that scouts have is, number 1, he only played 17 games. So any analysis of him is based on a small sample size. And some scouts wonder whether or not he has enough offensive upside. Coming in after Schaefer on the list, Rasmus Dahlin from 2018 in the 6th spot, Owen Power in the 7th spot from 2021, New Jersey Devils Nico Hischier in 2017 in the 8th spot, and then in 9th, Alex Lafreniere of the Rangers, followed by Yuri Slavkovsky of the Montreal Canadiens. Those are the 10 players that were ranked. So it's interesting to see Schaefer ranked right in the middle of that list. And, this is not considered a great draft. There is no player who is considered a generational talent like your Bedard or your Celebrini. And it's not a very deep draft. You go beyond the first 5 picks, there's a big drop off. And then maybe after the 12th or 13th pick, there's another big drop off. I would say that a pick in the early to mid second round next year in 2026 is probably a better prospect overall than maybe the 15th pick in this year's draft. So there is that gap. What does that mean for the Islanders? Well, first of all, is Schaefer the guy they want to pick? We don't know. And we won't know. We'll know more when the new GM is chosen and has a chance to speak about it. Not that I expect the new GM to come in at his introductory press conference a few weeks before the draft and say, yeah, this is definitely the guy I'm taking. But we'll know more about that person's approach, philosophy, what they value in a prospect, who they, what position they think this organization needs to address the most. Those are all things that will help us. But I think it is comforting to know that executives and scouts and people in the know around the National Hockey League ranked Schaefer right in the middle out of the number one ranked prospects in the last 10 years. This draft, like I said, falls off quickly. So if you're not getting one of the top 4 or 5 picks in this draft, you're getting a lower caliber of player according to scouts. And that is yet another reason why it was huge for the New York Islanders to nail down that top pick, to win the draft lottery and get that top pick. It is just a boon to this franchise. A new GM, the number 1 overall pick. You have 2 number 1 picks coming in 2026, and you've got some young prospects who will probably be joining the team next year and the year after, or the year after that. There is potential for this team to finally get out of and extricate itself from the muddy middle where Lou Lamoriello had left the team over the last 4 seasons. We have got more to discuss on today's show. Tony DAngelo did a good job with the New York Islanders when they signed him mid-season. Where does he fit in, though, this season? And what impact could he have if he's back? We'll talk about that, plus our Islanders birthday of the day, coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. We continue our player-by-player analysis of the New York Islanders. Everydayers, we did Matthew Barzal on Monday, Mark Gatcomb on Tuesday, and Anthony Duclair yesterday. Today, we're going to discuss Tony DAngelo. And remember, Tony DAngelo started last season in the KHL, playing for St. Petersburg SKA. They and DAngelo agreed to mutually terminate his contract, and he signed with the Islanders mid-season when the Islanders were struck with a rash of injuries on the blue line. In 35 games with the Islanders, DAngelo had 4 goals and 19 points. He was a minus 11 plus minus, so not so good in that department. Basically had 4 assists on the power play, took 76 shots on goal in 35 games, so that's a little more than 2 a game, attempted 167 shots, and he gave you minutes. He played 23 minutes and 21 seconds per game for the Islanders, blocked a little more than 1 shot a game on average, 42 blocks in 35 games, 17 hits in 35 games, not a lot on the physical side, but here's the statistic that's a little concerning. 6 takeaways, 44 giveaways. That's not a very good ratio, and it's something that has kind of plagued DAngelo throughout his career. The thing about DAngelo, he can move the puck. He plays the game well in the offensive zone. He can quarterback the power play. In his own zone, he's average on a good day and troublesome on a bad day. And that is something that he needs to improve upon. And at this stage in his career, that ain't happening. I mean, realistically speaking, Tony DAngelo right now is what he is. He is 29 years old. He'll turn 30 in October. He is not going to all of a sudden develop into a defensive specialist. And here is the ultimate decision that I think is going to determine whether or not Tony DAngelo is a New York Islander next season. Number 1, is Patrick Roy retained as head coach of the New York Islanders? If the answer to that question is yes, Tony DAngelo has a much better chance of remaining with the Islanders. He is a puck-moving defenseman with a little bit of speed who can transition from defense to offense. That's the kind of defenseman that Patrick Roy prefers, and I think his chances of remaining an Islander go up if Roy remains the coach. Here's the second factor, though. I don't think the Islanders should overpay Tony DAngelo. I think he's a useful piece. I think he can help out, but he is either a second or third pairing defenseman who give you minutes on the second power play unit, can fill in on the first power play unit, but ideally is on the second power play unit. And you know, he signed last year prorated for the league minimum. I'd give him a little more than that, maybe $1 million, $1.5 million a year for a 1-year deal. If he gets a better offer to play somewhere else, go. I like Tony DAngelo on the ice. He kept his nose clean off the ice. That never became an issue during his tenure with the Islanders, and that's great news. It was certainly a concern for some people when he was signed, but I'm not overpaying to keep Tony DAngelo. He's a useful player. He can help this team on the ice, but his value is no higher in my mind. I'd give him 1.5. I wouldn't go higher than $2 million for 1 or 2 years max. And, you know, he's been a journeyman throughout his career for a number of reasons on and off the ice. I think he can be a useful role player, but number 1, it's whether Roy is back. And number 2, the money. If you work out those 2 things, Tony DAngelo could very well remain a New York Islander. This was an easy Islanders birthday of the day. I think many of you probably got it, but today is the 36th birthday of Islanders winger Matt Martin, the Windsor, Ontario native, a 5th-round pick of the Islanders. In 2008, played his first few games with the Isles during the 2009-2010 season, was traded to the Maple Leafs in 2016, 2017, came back to the Isles in 2018, 2019. He's played 987 career NHL games, 13 games shy of 1,000, 81 career goals, 178 points, 1,168 penalty minutes, add 8 goals and 13 points in 88 playoff games, with all but 6 of those coming with the New York Islanders. I believe, and I think Matt Martin kind of knows, that his time with the New York Islanders is most likely over. I think, again, with Lou Lamoriello out of the picture, the age, the way he played over the course of the season, probably not coming back. But let's go back and look at one of Matt Martin's most memorable moments as an Islander. June 19th, 2021, the Stanley Cup semifinals, Islanders hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning in Game 4 of their series. Islanders down in the series 2-1. Andrei Vasilevsky, the goalie for the Bolts. Semyon Varlamov in between the pipes for the Islanders. And the Islanders had a 2-0 lead late in the second period when our Islanders' birthday of the day, Matt Martin, scored his first goal of the playoffs. Cal Clutterbuck and Adam Pelech with the assists. In the third period, the Lightning scored twice, Braden Point, Tyler Johnson, but it wasn't enough. So the Islanders even the series at 2-2 by beating the Lightning 3-2. And who got the game-winning goal? Matt Martin. He scored 1 goal on his only shot on goal, played a little less than 11 minutes of ice time in this game, but he and the identity line helped set the tone for this win. Cal Clutterbuck had 2 assists in this game as well. Matt Martin, forever a great Islander, although he may not be back with the team next season as a player, he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders throughout this critical off season. And it's great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. We will be back tomorrow, everydayers. We will continue our player-by-player analysis with Semyon Varlamov. We'll talk about him and what his future role, if any, is with the Islanders. Plus, we'll have the latest news on the GM search, the decision on the first overall pick, and all things Islanders. Until tomorrow, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.